Driving my 1995 GMC Suburban is a pure joy. Such a unique looking truck. Loved by so many. The GMT-400, the CK-1500, the Suburban of our childhood. Now, you may not drive the same truck I drive. Nevertheless, this is why your factory car stereo sucks. Now, my 95 is great, but there is one glaring problem. The audio system. It was really bad. To fix this, I started with the speakers. Replaced those with some excellent Infinity speakers. It went well. Links to those videos and products down in the description below. Now, after replacing those speakers, the factory head unit stood out like a really sore thumb. Man, it was bad. The FM radio barely worked. There was no CD player. The tape player sounded like, well, you can guess that one. The EQ was borderline non-existent, and the amp inside was so distorted you could barely turn it up past whispering level. Needless to say, a new head unit was on order. I did some research and landed on this Sony MEX-N5300BT. Yeah, it's a mouthful. I'll have a separate video reviewing this head unit in detail, but for now, just know that this thing is phenomenal in all the ways that the factory head unit was not. And that BT at the end of the model number, yeah, that stands for Bluetooth. Yes, 95, welcome to the 21st century. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's install this thing. So here we are in the truck, and the first thing we have to do is remove our old stereo. To do that, we're just gonna have to remove a couple of these trim pieces, and I'm gonna get started on that right now. The first to go is this front face trim piece, the main one, and you simply just start pulling, and it should just pop right out. Okay, so that's loose. The next thing we focus on is actually removing the electrical connections to these switches. One thing we can do to make this process a little easier is moving our shift knob all the way down into first gear. So let's put the key in the ignition over into the run position, and we will go ahead and slide this sucker down, but make sure you got your e-brake on, and also lower our steering column as much as we can. That gives us adequate room to be able to move this front bezel around without having any obstructions. And a little flathead screwdriver is always a great tool to have when removing electrical connections. There we go. Now I can pop this switch back in its place, and it is fully disconnected. We have one more to go here on this side. Okay, so looking back behind the panel here, you can see our two electrical connections that we had to take off here. And of course, we also had to remove this one, which is right back here. Now I can simply lift up and remove this bezel. In order to remove the actual stereo, we have two clips here on the side that actually push down and allow this stereo to be pulled right out. If we take a look at the rear of the unit here, we can see there's only two plugs we need to remove. Number one is here, and number two is our antenna, which is here. And those just pull right out. Now our factory stereo is free at last. Looking inside at the factory wiring harness, I can see that at some point in this truck's history, somebody was doing some kind of custom work with the audio. So I'll just need to make sure that these connections are perfect before I push everything back into place. Yes, that just happened. I now have my factory wiring harness all tidied up and ready to go. And what's so great about Crutchfield is they include everything necessary to make the connection as simple as possible to the new stereo. In this case, you can see they've included this Metra wiring harness that goes to my GM factory harness. And all I'm gonna simply do is plug it in just like that. There is one thing to note though, we do have to make the connection with all of these wires onto the Sony stereo wiring harness. While this may seem like a very daunting task, and it kind of is, it really is pretty straightforward. We're simply gonna connect the colors. For example, purple goes to purple, green to green, orange to orange, and so on and so forth. The question though is, how do you connect these? The way I'm going to do it is by soldering each one of these connections and then using heat shrink material to cover them up. Included with this Sony Bluetooth head unit, we have this microphone, and this is obviously used to be able to talk to people via Bluetooth over your phone. But I need to figure out where to mount this thing. It does include this clip, and that is to be able to mount it to your sun visor, for example, like this. That way the mic is pointed directly at your face when you're talking to someone, and hopefully your audio will be crystal clear. As it turns out, I did decide to mount the microphone to the sun visor. It was simply the easiest path for me to get this job done, so I chose to take it. I ran the wire straight down this A-pillar, down behind the dash up against the front windshield. The wire then comes out from behind the dash and down inside this vent hole, which then you can see comes straight out to here. Also included in this kit from Crutchfield is this GM antenna adapter. Here you can see our factory antenna wire, but it's just a little too small for the opening in the back of the Sony head unit. So I'll simply take the ends and connect them. Now we have a compatible antenna wire to go to the back of the Sony head unit. All right, so back at the bench here, we're taking a look at my factory head unit that came out of the truck. Now you can see this is actually not quite double DIN and it's not a single DIN. So what do you have in the middle there? This is 1.5 DIN. There is absolutely no aftermarket stereos that fit this size. Unfortunately, because of that, we need to use an adapter, and that's what this does. It essentially centers the single DIN unit within the 1.5 DIN space. This kit from Metra comes with various spacers and everything to get this working properly. This is the spacer I'm going to be using. It just simply slides right into the slot there, and then our DIN cage just slides right in, and of course, the faceplate will go there. So you can see the fit is pretty good. It's not the absolute best. I wish it were better, but it's not bad. Now that we have this DIN cage installed, you can see there are actually tabs here on the inside. What you need to do is actually bend these tabs outward so that they catch on this cage and make for a very tight fit. Okay, so here you can see the tabs that I bent in. There's one big one that kind of takes care of the most of it. And then there's these closer ones where I was able to bend about half of it in. You can see one there which is bent about as much as it'll go. Okay, at this point we have all of our connections ready to go. We have our microphone, we have our antenna, we also have our main wiring harness. Now we need to install this bracket. I went ahead and pulled the antenna and the microphone wire through, and I'm lining up this bracket, making sure not to pinch any wiring, and this should just click right in. There we go. That is a nice tight fit. Now that our bracket is installed and nice and tight, we can go ahead with our connections. Okay, so because they give you so much length of this microphone cable, I'm gonna go ahead and wire tie it back in there. Okay, so we have this wire bundled up. Everything is labeled on the back of the head unit, so I know exactly where this microphone cable goes, right there. Also, my antenna cable just goes right here. And last but definitely not least, our main wiring harness gets connected right here. And you can hear that click right in. Now that everything is connected, we're gonna go ahead and fish everything back in there and begin pushing in the head unit until you feel it click in on both sides. Perfect. Now we can reinstall this faceplate bezel. Just like that. And of course, last but not least, we have our faceplate, and this one is a beauty. So looking at this faceplate, I can see there's a notch right here for a tab there. I'm assuming you slide that in first, just like that. All right, that looks great. All right, guys, well, I have this thing hooked up, the battery is reconnected, and everything is working great. It may be a little hard to tell, but I have the outside button lights set to medium amber, and I have the display set to cyan. This is the color scheme that's on the front of the box, and personally, the color scheme that I think looks best. But you can go through basically any other color under the rainbow. Well, what'd you think? Was it a good install? I feel good about it. What was amazing to me is that every single thing I needed to install this thing came in the box free of charge from Crutchfield. I couldn't believe that because I only paid for the head unit and that was pretty cheap already. From the 1.5 DIN to single DIN bracket to the wiring harness, all there. Free of charge. I did have to solder both of the harnesses together to connect all the wiring, but that was pretty straightforward, just connecting color to color. I did have one minor problem, and that was the blue wire. The only wire that I actually didn't hook up. The reason why I didn't hook it up is because the instructions said that it was for a powered antenna, and if you didn't have one, that it wasn't necessary. Well, it was necessary for my truck because the rear two speakers on these Suburbans are powered by an external amplifier. And they use that blue wire to power that external amplifier. So when I got done installing everything, putting it all back together, cranked it on, all I heard was sound coming from the front two speakers and the ones way in the back by the back tailgate. Yeah, the rear two speakers weren't working. So after a little bit of Googling, apparently this is a very common thing. You have to use that blue wire on these GMT 400 trucks to power that amplifier, which then powers the two rear door speakers. Just a little FYI for you. Now, unfortunately, I can't play any music for you. Not that it would sound great, because it'd just be recorded with my camera's audio, but needless to say, there is copyright restrictions. That's why nobody plays music unless they have copyright-free music, and I'm not about to get my video taken down due to a copyright restriction. But I can show you a few things, like the Bluetooth connectivity, for example. So if I go to my phone here and just call my wife, it'll cut in if it was playing music, and it'll start to call her right over the speakers. So it'll turn the music all the way down, and now I'm calling my wife.
Okay, don't worry, I'm coming home and I'm gonna make you food.
Sorry, babe, you're on camera here. I'm just testing out the phone system here in this this new Sony head unit. So what do I sound like?
And it's on Bluetooth? Like legit? I don't believe it. I'm coming home right now.
Yeah, your voice is playing right through the speakers.
Is it annoying as usual?
Yep.
Cool, babe. I'm proud of you.
I can actually connect my phone and not only play music from my Amazon Prime account, but I can also make and receive phone calls during that music playback. Yeah, it literally works just as good as the 2019 vehicles you see on the road today. And that is because this Sony head unit that I chose is a brand new unit. They just came out with this thing. Well, that'll do it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed it, please smash that thumb that points to heaven. And if you're not subbed, please hit that subscribe button while you're at it. And don't forget, you can catch me on the gram at One Road Garage and my website at oneroadgarage.com. Oh, and make sure you check that description below for links to anything you saw here in this video. My name is Jimmy, this is One Road, and I will see you in the next one.